Hey guys, I just wanted to get on and say thank you first for you guys watching the video, my motivational video where I was just kind of talking about some experiences of fellow entrepreneurs in the event planning business. And thank you guys so much for all your feedback. Like I said, I'm just trying to right now continue to grow my business, and part of that was that I wanted to start creating more content where I'm sharing with you guys more about me and more about my business and my experiences. So I appreciate you guys for watching, and I appreciate the feedback. I did get a lot of feedback about creating a YouTube video, a YouTube channel, and so that is on the way. I want you guys to know that I have heard all those comments and that feedback. I'll definitely be working on that and working on different content. Posting videos of behind the scenes doing parties, party setups, different crafting things. I do a lot of the decorations that I do for my events I make them by hand, so I can definitely post some tutorials for things like that. Probably the biggest question that I got was about pricing, how to do pricing. I know that is usually when I'm on like an event planner group or in any type of event planner forum with other entrepreneurs, that's like the biggest, entrepreneurs generally, it's like the biggest question. It's like, how do I do pricing? The other question is, how do I get started? So I'll probably do a video for both of those, the how do you get started and the how to do pricing. Since pricing was probably the most asked question, I'll talk about that one too. But I would say step one, when you're trying to create pricing, is that you want to sit down and you want to write down what type of services you offer within your business. So I'll speak for me personally. The two main services that I offer are event designing and event planning. Event planning, for those of you who don't know, if you're new into the industry and you don't know the terms, or if you're just trying to learn right now, event planning is more so like event coordination. So you come in, you're booking the venue, you're booking any other vendors, entertainment, you could be handling guest management, guest RSVP management, pretty much all of the logistics of an event. You also can do event designing within event planning if that's something that you want to offer. But event designing is kind of just when you come in and you're just solely working on the aesthetics of an event and you're just coming in and decorating. Again, clients can hire you for both or hire me for one or the other. So those are the two main services that I offer. When you find out what services that you offer, what you want to do is you want to pinpoint an hourly rate that you want to charge for each of those services. The reason why an hourly rate is important is because 9 times out of 10 when I'm talking to any type of new entrepreneur, specifically event planners, the biggest mistake that I see them making is them not paying themselves for their time. A lot of time I'll see event planners say, okay, it costs X amount of money for materials. I'd be okay with making a couple of $100s off of this party, so I'm just going to tell the client this is the cost, and then that's it. You have to take into consideration your labor as well as any other type of overhead costs, not just the material. So like, for example, if you have to go to Walmart 4 times and you buy, during those 4 trips, you buy $200 worth of material at Walmart, you should be taking into consideration the $200 worth of material, taxes if that applies in your state. You should be considering the gas usage that it takes for you to go, and gas mileage and maintenance on your car that it takes you to go back and forth. If you're coming home and you're using a printer and you're going through ink, you should be taking into consideration those cumulative costs. So not to say like, you need to charge every individual client for a whole new ink cartridge or anything like that, but take into consideration, an estimate of how much, you think these overhead costs are going to count for. So we don't want to leave any of that money on the table. You don't want to not pay yourself, because as an employee of your company, you have to pay yourself. And so finding an hourly rate is going to be super important, a super important part of the equation. As far as your hourly rate goes, you can vary that number is not, the reason why I'm giving you guys an equation and not a number or a set amount is because it's whatever works for you. Again, like I said earlier in the video, you might want to market to people who, are higher end clients, and you would charge more because higher end clients require, more work, there's more logistics going on to an event than someone who's doing like a birthday party for 10 at a Chuck E. Cheese. So you want to keep all that into consideration when you're coming up with these prices. So for me, my two services, event planning versus event designing. Event designing is a little bit easier for me because I'm only focusing on the aesthetics, instead of having to focus on the aesthetics and the logistics of like 7 vendors, et cetera, et cetera. So my hourly rate for my event designing is a little bit lower than my hourly rate for my event planning, right? So the base equation for any pricing that you're going to do should be your hourly rate times however many hours you think that this project or event or whatever it is going to take you to plan or execute, plus whatever your overhead, your costs are, your material costs or your overhead costs are. So let me go back and do some explaining, and I'll make sure I'll post these equations in the bottom of this post or wherever this video ends up going. But the amount of hours is something that's going to be really tricky for you to calculate, especially if you're just starting off and you don't really know how long it's going to take you to plan an event. But it's really, really important that you don't lowball yourself on this, and it's really, really important that you don't go above and beyond and overcharge a client for this. So you want to try to find like a nice happy medium. Take into consideration, for example, if this is an event that you already know that you have a lot of inventory for already, then you probably don't have to do a whole bunch of running around to pick up new inventory. So it will probably take you less hours to execute that event or to get everything together for that event. So you want to estimate lower hours. Similarly, the opposite, if you know this is an event where you have several vendors that you have to work with, you may be on the phone with your client, multiple days, take all that, phone consultations, when you're on the phone with your client, driving back and forth to different locations to pick up material. All of that is stuff that you have to take into consideration when you're calculating how many hours this is going to take you. So again, you'll get better with that over time as you kind of get more clients and you get more used to executing a party. You'll kind of have a better idea of how long a party or how many man hours that you're investing. And I encourage you, if you don't know for sure, like track it for your first couple events. Write down every day that you're working on an event. You're working on a specific event. You're traveling to a location to pick up something for a specific event. You're on the phone with the client. Like, go back and tally up all that time and see how long it takes you for your first couple events, so you kind of have an idea of how long or how much you should estimate for each event. We already talked about like your material costs or your overhead costs, kind of counting that. So again, you should be counting whatever the cost of the materials that you're purchasing, but also things like charging for things like printing, charging for gas mileage, phone usage, et cetera, et cetera. Try to calculate out how much you think that would cost per client for your business. And that's once you have completed the equation of your hourly rate times the amount of hours plus your overhead or material costs, that amount that you equal is going to be what I call, and I'm sure that there's probably a better term for this, I think it's actually called like wholesale if you're talking about retail, but I call that like my base cost, right? So I know that this is like the base cost of how much it's going to take me to execute this event, labor, overhead, and material. Once I get my base cost, I then take my base cost and I multiply that base cost by whatever percentage of a profit that I want to make. So you have to take into consideration what you want your profit margin to be. Considered a good profit margin in retail is anywhere between 10 to 20%. So if you're starting off and you're like, I'm just trying to, get more experience, and I know I'm not proficient in a lot of things, but obviously I'm running a business and I want to take a profit. Maybe you say, I just want to make a 10% profit off of this event, whatever it is. But you'll take your base cost and you'll multiply that by whatever the profit margin is, and then add that amount back to your base cost, and that's going to be your total cost for the event. So just for, example's sake, let's say that like your hourly rate is $10 an hour. That is low. I think the national average for event planners is like $25 an hour. You can check out like salary.com and look for different examples online or figure out what's an average in your region. But let's just for example's sake say it's $10 an hour. $10 an hour times, let's say it's going to take you 10 hours to plan and execute this event. That's going to be $100. Plus, let's say it took you $100 in material and overhead costs. So your base price is $200. Let's say that you want to get, you're taking your base price of $200 and you want to have a 10% profit margin. So your $200 times 10% is going to be $20. Add that back to your base price, and your total price for whatever you're quoting somebody for should be $220. So I hope that makes sense for you guys. And that, like I said, that's kind of how I figure out my pricing for any equation. This can apply to, like I said, event pricing. If you're just charging for, like, if you're a person that does like custom props, it would be the same equation. Your hourly rate times the amount of hours it takes you to make the prop, plus the material and overhead that it costs to build this prop. Then you take that base cost and times it by your profit margin, and that's what the price of that prop would be. Bakers or cake makers, cake designers, same thing. Your hourly rate times how many hours it's going to take you to make this cake or these treats, plus whatever your overhead and your baking material would be. Take the base price, multiply that times your profit margin, and add it back to the base price. That's going to be your price for whatever you're doing. So again, it's like I said, it's really, really important that we don't leave money on the table. Your pay is not your profit margin. Your profit margin and your pay for labor are two different things. And if you're not paying yourself for the work that you're doing, you're only counting your margin, whatever your profit is, as your pay, then you are leaving money on the table. Again, this is a mistake that most of us make, especially when we're new. Especially if you're not going to school and you're self-taught like myself, that's like a very common mistake. But these are all equations that like retail uses to calculate out their prices for things. This is wholesale pricing versus retail pricing, if you want to look that up and get more information on it really quickly. So event planners, if you have things in inventory that you're using for parties, please do not just include those items free for your clients and charge them for the material that you're having to purchase new. When you get material, and for those of you who don't know, if you're just starting off, if you have to purchase material for your event, that material is yours to keep. So that should be a part of your contract. I can do another video about contracts, because guys, please have some type of contract or some type of clause in your invoices or something that stipulates, your rules, your policies, et cetera. Please don't just like verbally make agreements with clients. Please don't do any of that over the phone. Always have a paper trail. Like, if you have a conversation with a client, always send them an email or at minimum a text, preferably email, just because that's more professional, but preferably an email at the end summarizing what you guys discussed. That at minimum, at best, have a contract outlining your policies, because you're going to run into people who things come up, they thought they had a budget that they end up not having. Now all of a sudden they want to cancel, or they're trying to, make you do extra work to like lower the cost of things. And it's just like, if your policy is clear, like I can't tell you how many times I see, specifically in the pandemic, how many times I've been in event groups and I've seen people say things like, oh, I took a deposit for this person, COVID happened, they canceled the event, now they want their deposit back, what should I do? And it's like, if you had a clear policy, if you had a contract, but at bare minimum, if you had a clear policy that says, no refunds, then you cannot refund these people back. I mean, usually when you get a deposit, most people start making purchases for the event right away. And so you definitely don't want to lose out on the money that you now have. You would essentially have to come out of pocket now, because you've already purchased the inventory to pay this person back. But if you have clear policy written out and given that to each client, then you shouldn't have that issue. But anyways, back to what I was saying about inventory. Please don't just give out inventory for free just because you have it in inventory. Don't be like, oh, a client wants a unicorn party. And you're like, oh my God, I have all the stuff from the unicorn party I already used. Like, good, I can only charge her such and such. That is not how that is supposed to work. So when you purchase something, like I was saying before, for an event that should be yours to keep and reuse for, you know, future events. That is kind of standard policy for the event planning industry. If you're concerned about that, definitely keep that in your contract, or put that in your contract, or clause at the end of an invoice so that your client is aware. And then once you have that item in inventory, what you want to do is you want to create a list. I encourage you to create a spreadsheet. I personally don't like spreadsheets. Some people love spreadsheets, but create a spreadsheet that keeps track of all of the inventory that you have, and then put an associated cost with it, right? So like you could, let's say a drink dispenser. Let's say you spent $20 on a drink dispenser. You're not even spending the $20 on it, because if you're purchasing it new for an event, your client is covering the cost, essentially. And then once that event's over, you can add that to your inventory list. It was purchased for $20. Let's say that you now rent it out for every event going forward for $10. And in 2 events, you've already paid off the amount for the dispenser, even though you didn't pay for it. But let's say, hopefully your client paid for it. Let's even say that you've purchased some inventory. You're walking around, you know, Michael's, and you see something, you're like, oh, that would be great for my next event. You purchase it, it's $20. You now have to put a rental price on it. Let's say you put it at $10 to rent for an event. Now after 2 events, you've paid that off, and every single time that you use it after that, it's profit. You're profiting off of it. So do that for every single item: linens, tablecloths, dispensers, whatever it is. Like even your backdrop stand, like you have to reuse that for every single thing. Like that is a luxury that you're giving your client. You could be a person that just tapes up a vinyl backdrop on a wall. So they're having an added, you know, benefit of having a backdrop stand, therefore it should be charged. So make sure that you have a list. So again, when you're mocking up your setup or whatever, and you're like, okay, I want to pull from here, I want to pull from here, you have an associated cost with all those things to take into consideration. Another video on getting started soon. So if there's anything else that fellow event planners or fellow entrepreneurs, like I said, I know this is like a huge market and we can all benefit off of each other. Let me know what you guys would like to see. Do it now, because I can't always promise that I'm going to be giving this information out for free. I see a lot of people making money off of these master classes that everyone is doing. And I'm not mad at y'all, get that money, but make sure that you guys let me know now what you want to know, because it could be a master class soon and you guys kind of had a head start. So hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and make sure that you're waking up every day and doing what you love. All right, see you guys next time. Bye.